Let me start with a question that might make you think. Have you ever imagined what it would be like if the person you're desperately trying to escape becomes the one you absolutely cannot imagine living without? Stick around until the very end. And if stories like this resonate with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content just like this. There I was, positioned at the beginning of the aisle, my nails pressing into the delicate lace of my wedding dress as though destroying it could somehow free me from this moment. My pulse thundered so violently I could barely hear the hushed conversations floating through the ancient chapel. The scent of old wood mixed with something deeper like years of sorrow absorbed into the timber itself. The atmosphere felt suffocating, making it difficult to breathe through the constriction in my chest. Nobody had bothered to ask if this was what I wanted. Nobody had cared enough to wonder. The few guests present were scattered throughout the wooden benches, their gazes sharp with curiosity, studying me like some exotic creature put on display. Not a single one of them was there for me. No companions. No relatives, just strangers from the circle. Well-dressed people who didn't know the first thing about me and couldn't care less dot. And then there was him, Liam Mason. He waited by the altar, imposing and stern, his perfectly tailored black suit. His stance was flawless, his face an unreadable mask, like marble carved for admiration but never meant to be touched. His dark hair was slicked back without a single strand displaced. Those eyes steel gray, nearly silver under the dim lighting, never. Once found mine, he didn't need to look. He didn't have to. Victory was already his dot. My father's words haunted every step I took down that aisle. This is what you must do, Emma. It's the only path to saving your mother. The only way. I despised those words. Despised how they trapped me, cornered me, left me standing here, watching my life come undone like a thread being pulled. I forced my legs to move, each step feeling heavier than the one before. The fabric of my gown whispered against the ancient stone floor, a sound so quiet yet thunderous. In my ears, I tried not to think about the vows I was about to make. I tried not to look at the man who would never care for me, but my eyes betrayed me dot for just an instant. I glanced up and Liam shifted slightly, just enough for me to catch a glimpse of something cold and distant in his gaze, as if I were merely a transaction he'd completed. Nothing more. I swallowed against the burning in my throat. The priest's voice felt like white noise in the background, meaningless words filling a space that had never known warmth. My hand shook as I gripped the bouquet tighter, crushing the delicate white petals. That's when I noticed a small drawer partially open on a side table near the altar. I'm not sure what drew my attention to it, but my feet carried me there as if I had no control. My heart raced faster, harder as I reached out and pulled the drawer open a bit more. Inside, carefully folded, was a letter. The paper had yellowed. Around the edges, the ink faded but still readable. My mother's handwriting. I felt the breath catch in my lungs. My mother had never mentioned Liam or anyone named Mason. She had never spoken that surname aloud. But there it was, written at the top of the letter like a ghost tugging at my memory, to Michael Mason. Liam's surname. My knees went weak. I had to grip the table's edge to stay upright. My mind reeled as I tried to make sense of it. Why would my mother have written to someone in his family? What connection did they have to us, to me? Before I could read any further, the priest cleared his throat loudly, pulling my attention back to the reality I couldn't escape. I quickly tucked the letter into the folds of my dress, pressing it against my racing heart. I didn't understand it, not yet, but I would find out somehow. Liam extended his hand toward me, cold and unwavering. His expression remained unchanged, not even when I placed my trembling fingers in his. Do you, Emma Blair, take Liam Mason to be your lawfully wedded husband? I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think clearly. but I could hear my mother's voice, soft and weak from all those nights I sat beside her bed. Sometimes love is what you give up, not what you hold on to. And so I whispered the words I swore I'd never speak. I do. Liam's response came without hesitation. I do. No pause, no emotion. Just words. The priest declared us husband and wife. But it sounded more like a verdict than a blessing. Liam didn't kiss me. He didn't even lean close. He simply turned, offering his arm like I was a stranger he'd been obligated to escort. I placed my hand on his sleeve, feeling nothing but the chill beneath the fabric. As we walked down the aisle together, I glanced back once more at the drawer, at the empty space where the letter had been hidden. Something was wrong. Something had always been wrong. And as the chapel doors groaned open, the cold Boston night biting at my skin, I knew this wasn't an ending. It was just the beginning. The rain began the moment I crossed through the iron gates of the Mason estate. The sky opened without warning, as if even heaven couldn't witness what I had done. The dress became a burden, the soaked fabric clinging to my legs as I ran down the narrow street, each breath tearing through my chest. My once delicate white shoes were ruined, mud-splattered, slipping on the wet pavement with every frantic step. I didn't care. I just had to get away. I had no destination in mind. I hadn't planned that far ahead. All I knew was that I couldn't stay. I couldn't wake up tomorrow in that house, living that life. So I ran. I ran past closed storefronts, past glowing streetlights, flickering in the mist until I reached the old bus terminal on the town's outskirts. The platform was empty except for the dim light buzzing overhead. I stood there shivering, my arms wrapped tightly around myself as the rain continued to fall. The schedule board flickered to life, announcing the next bus wouldn't arrive for another 40 minutes. My heart sank. 40 minutes felt like an eternity. Pressed my back against the cold metal bench, sinking down onto it, burying my face in my hands. I could still feel the weight of Liam's stare on me, the way his arm had felt like steel beneath my touch as we walked down that aisle. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But I didn't either. I just sat there trembling until I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, steady, deliberate. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. I didn't dare look up. I didn't need to. I already knew who was there, Liam. I sensed him before I saw him, felt the air change. The weight of his presence closing around me like a net I couldn't escape. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing him to disappear. But when I finally lifted my head, he was standing just a few feet away, no umbrella, no coat, just him, drenched to the bone. Water dripped from his dark hair, his white shirt clinging to his, framed like a second skin. His tie hung loose around his neck, forgotten. His expression wasn't cold or empty. It was something else entirely. For the first time since I'd met him, Liam Mason looked lost. My throat tightened as I pushed myself to my feet. Go home, I choked out, my voice shaking. Just leave me alone. He didn't move, didn't speak. He just stood there, rain sliding down his face like tears he refused to shed. I took a step back, clutching the edges of my soaked gown. I said, leave. Still, he remained silent. But something in his jaw shifted, like he was fighting an internal battle. His hands clenched at his sides, trembling slightly before he finally spoke. His voice low and raw, nothing like I'd ever heard before. I don't need you to want me, Emma. The words hung in the air, heavier than the rain pounding the pavement. Liam swallowed hard, taking a hesitant step toward me. But I don't know how to exist without you. It shattered something inside me. Not the anger, not the fear, but the lie I'd been telling myself that he didn't care, that I didn't care. I shook my head, trying to stop the ache rising in my chest. You don't mean that. You can't mean that. But he nodded, his breath hitching as his voice cracked. I wish I didn't. I turned to run again, but his hand shot out, catching my wrist. Not roughly, not forcefully, just enough to stop me. Please, he whispered so softly I almost didn't hear it over the rain. I wrenched my arm free, taking another step back. You don't get to stand there and say that to me after everything. You can't just show up now and his grip tightened again. Not painful, not controlling, desperate. I looked down at his hand on mine, then back up at him. That's when I saw it. He was trembling, not from the cold, not from anger, but from something deeper. Something that scared him more than anything else ever could. Me. He took a shaky breath, his voice breaking again. Come home with me, please. I should have refused. I should have turned and walked away, left him standing there in the rain. But I didn't. I couldn't because the truth, the awful, terrifying truth, was that I didn't want to be alone either, before I could stop myself, before I could second guess. What I already knew, I felt my body move toward him. Just one step. That's all it took. Liam's hand slid from my wrist to my fingers, threading them together like he was afraid to let go. I felt the air leave my lungs as he leaned in, his forehead nearly touching mine. I'm not asking for forever, he whispered, his voice shaking like he was falling apart. Just tonight. And without another word, he opened the door to the black car parked just behind him and gently guided me inside. The car door closed behind me with a soft click that seemed louder than any slam. The air inside was thick with warm leather and something else, something entirely him. Liam slid into the driver's seat without a word, rain still dripping from his hair, soaking through his shirt. Neither of us spoke as he started the engine. We didn't need to. I could feel it. In every breath, in every glance he stole when he thought I wouldn't notice. The city blurred past the windows, lights stretching like golden veins in the night. My heart pounded louder than the hum of tires on wet pavement. My hands trembled. In my lap, clutching the soaked fabric of my dress. Why had I returned with him? I didn't have an answer, not one that made sense. When we pulled up to the old stone hotel overlooking the river, I almost asked why we weren't returning to the estate. But the words never left my lips. Liam got out first, circling the car to open my door like something from a dream I never allowed myself to have. The lobby was quiet, dimly lit with old brass lamps and dark wood paneling. The clerk didn't even lift his head as Liam led me toward the elevator, his hand hovering near the small of my back, not touching, but close enough that my skin prickled. With every step, I wanted to speak, to say something to break the silence tightening around us like a noose. But all I could hear was the rain. The elevator doors slid shut behind us, sealing us in a world that felt too small, too heavy. I pressed my back against the cool metal wall, trying to maintain distance between us, but the air seemed to crackle, pulling us closer with every breath. Liam ran a hand through his wet hair, droplets flicking onto his cheeks. He was trembling not from the cold, but from something deeper, something raw. When he finally turned to me, his voice was so soft I almost missed it. I've been standing in that rain for over an hour, Emma. I swallowed hard, clutching the folds of my dress tighter. You shouldn't have, I whispered. He stepped closer, slow, deliberate, his jaw tightening like he was holding something back. Maybe I shouldn't have done a lot of things, he murmured. The elevator chimed softly as the door slid open to the top floor. Liam didn't move for a moment, just stood there watching me like he was afraid I might vanish if he blinked. Then, with a shallow breath, he held out his hand. I stared at it, frozen, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might shatter me. But I reached for him. God help me, I reached for him. His fingers closed around mine, warm and steady, and he led me down the quiet hallway to the farthest door room, 514. He unlocked it with a single swipe of the key card, pushing it open with a gentle nudge of his shoulder. The room was dark, lit only by the faint glow of the city beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. I stepped inside first, my breath catching as the door clicked shut behind me. I could feel him standing there, watching me from the shadows. The rain outside had slowed to a soft patter against the glass, a quiet rhythm that matched the frantic beat of my heart. I turned, my voice shaking. "What do you want from me, Liam?" He took a step forward, closing the space between us inch by inch until the air thickened with something I couldn't name. His voice was rough, almost broken. "Everything." He whispered Dot, and then he kissed me Dot. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't careful. It was desperate acclaiming, like he'd been holding back for too long and couldn't bear it another second. His hands tangled in my hair, pulling me closer as his mouth consumed mine. I gasped, clutching his soaked shirt, feeling the tension snap between us like a live wire. He lifted me with ease, carrying me toward the bed, his breath ragged against my ear. "I need you to tell me to stop," he whispered, but I couldn't because for the first time since this nightmare began, I didn't want to stop. He laid me down gently, his hands shaking as he brushed the wet strands of hair from my face. His eyes searched mine, waiting, begging for something I couldn't give him with words, Dot, so I answered with my touch. I reached for him, pulling him down to me, letting the weight of him settle over me like a promise. And when he kissed me again slower, this time my heart broke wide open, because somewhere in the chaos I realized I wanted him to claim me. Not because I was trapped, not because I was afraid, but because I wanted to be his. And for the first time I saw it in his eyes. He wanted to be mine too. I woke to the soft light of dawn pressing through the sheer curtains. For a moment, I didn't move. I just lay there, still and quiet, letting the weight of the night settle over me like a second skin. The air smelled faintly of rain and something warmer, his cologne, maybe, or the way his breath had curled against my skin hours ago. When he whispered my name like a prayer he hadn't meant to say aloud, I turned my head slowly, half afraid he'd be gone, but he wasn't. Liam sat on the edge of the bed, still shirtless, his broad back to me as he ran a hand through his dark hair. The muscles in his shoulders were tense with every breath, like he was fighting some silent war within himself. I pulled the sheet tighter around me, suddenly unsure of what I was supposed to do now. He hadn't left. That was the part I didn't understand. Men like Liam Mason didn't linger. They didn't wait. And yet here he was. I cleared my throat softly, and he turned, his gray eyes darker than I'd ever seen them. There was something fragile in his expression, something unsteady that unsettled me more than all his coldness ever had. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, his voice low and rough. "You can go if you want to." The words landed like a punch, knocking the breath from my lungs, but he didn't stop there. His jaw tightened as he swallowed hard, like every word cost him more than he could afford to give. "I won't stop you, Emma," he whispered, his eyes locked on mine. "But please don't." I felt the air catch in my throat, my heart pounding so loud it hurt. He looked down at his hands, clenching them into fists like he was trying to hold himself together. "I don't deserve to ask you for anything," he murmured, almost too soft to hear. "But if you stay, I swear I'll try to be the man you deserve." The man I deserve. Did I even know what that meant anymore? I sat up slowly, pulling the sheet tighter around me, my voice trembling. "Why, Liam? Why now? Why tonight? After everything?" He shook his head, standing abruptly and pacing toward the window. The city stretched out below us, bathed in gold and pale blue, like the whole world had started over while we were still stuck in yesterday. He pressed his hand to the glass, his shoulders rising and falling with each ragged breath. "Because last night I realized something," he said softly. I waited, my heart in my throat. He turned to face me, his eyes shining in the morning light. I don't want to wake up tomorrow if you're not there. Tears burned the corners of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I needed to think. I needed air. I slipped out of bed, grabbing the oversized hotel robe and wrapping it around myself like armor. My bare feet padded softly across the hardwood floor as I moved toward him. He didn't move. He didn't reach for me. He just stood there waiting, like he had the night before in the rain. I stopped just short of touching him, my voice barely more than a whisper. "You don't even know me, Liam." His lips parted like he wanted to argue, but no words came. I turned away, crossing the room to where my dress still lay crumpled on the floor. I gathered it in my arms, clutching it to my chest, like it could somehow protect me from the ache building in my heart. "I need time," I whispered, my throat tight. "I need to understand why I'm still here." Liam took a shaky step toward me, but I held up a hand, stopping him. "Please," I said, my voice cracking. "Let me think." He nodded slowly, his expression unreadable, but I saw the way his hands trembled at his sides. Without another word, I slipped into the bathroom, closing the door. Softly behind me, I leaned against it, pressing my forehead to the cool wood, trying to steady my breathing. Somewhere deep inside my robe pocket, I felt the folded edge of the letter I had hidden the night before. My fingers trembled as I pulled it out, staring at my mother's handwriting again, to Michael Mason. The name hit me harder now than it had in the chapel. Mason. Liam Mason. Was it just a coincidence? Or was this something more? I unfolded the letter with shaking hands, scanning the faded words. "I'm sorry for what happened. I never meant to hurt you or your family. I hope one day you'll understand why I had to walk away." My breath caught. My mother had walked away from a Mason, from someone in Liam's family. The room spun. What if this marriage wasn't just about my father's debt? What if it was something older, something rooted in pain neither of us had been brave enough to face? I pressed the letter to my chest, tears slipping down my cheeks. I didn't have the answers yet, but I was starting to understand the question. And somehow I knew it was going to change everything. The knock on the door came softly at first. I thought maybe I had imagined it. I sat frozen on the edge of the bed, clutching the letter in my hands, the weight of it pressing against my chest like a stone I couldn't shake off. Another knock, louder this time. I glanced toward the bathroom door, expecting Liam to appear, but it remained closed. He had left me alone, as I had asked. Reluctantly, I stood and crossed the room, pulling the hotel robe tighter around me as I cracked the door open. A woman stood on the other side, tall, poised, older than me, but not by much. Her dark hair was twisted into an elegant knot at the nape of her neck, and her sharp eyes flicked over me with a familiarity that made my stomach churn. She wore red lipstick that somehow looked more like a threat than a choice. I had never seen her before, at least I didn't think I had. "Emma Blair," she said smoothly, as if she were greeting an old friend. I blinked, clutching the door a little tighter. "Who are you?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "My name is Lydia." The name hit me like a punch to the gut. I had heard it once, whispered in passing at the estate. Lydia, the woman who used to work with my mother, the woman who had disappeared from our lives without explanation. Before I could speak, she leaned closer, lowering her voice to a chilling whisper. "I believe you're holding something that belongs to me." I froze, glancing down at the letter still clutched in my hand. Her smile widened. "I thought so." My heart pounded in my chest. "What do you want?" Lydia sighed softly, as if I had asked the most exhausting question in the world. "You really have no idea, do you?" She murmured. I swallowed hard. "What are you talking about?" She leaned in closer, her voice like velvet laced with poison. "Your mother and Michael Mason." I felt the air leave my lungs. She nodded slowly, savoring every second of my confusion. She was in love with him once before she married your father, before she ruined everything. My hands trembled. You're lying. But I knew she wasn't. Lydia tilted her head, her smile sharp as glass. You see, darling, this marriage of yours, it's not about debt. It never was. It's about revenge, about unfinished business. You're the perfect pawn in a game that started long before you were born. I shook my head, backing away from the door. But she took another step forward, pressing her palm flat against it before I could close it. You think Liam married you to save your family? She whispered, her eyes dark with something I couldn't name. He married you to ruin you, to make your mother pay for walking away from his family, from him. I felt the blood drain from my face. It couldn't be true. It couldn't. Lydia leaned back, her expression satisfied. But don't worry, she added lightly. I'll give you a way out. I'll go to the press. I'll tell them everything, the deal, the debt, the real reason behind your picture-perfect wedding. I swallowed hard, my throat burning. Why? I whispered. What do you get from this? She smiled again, colder this time. Because I hate them both, your mother and Liam Mason. And just like that, she turned and walked away. Leaving me trembling in the doorway, I waited until I was sure she was gone before closing the door with shaking hands. I sank to the floor, clutching the letter like it could somehow shield me from the truth that had just been poured into my lap. Was that why Liam had really married me? To finish what had started all those years ago? To make my mother suffer through me? I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. And yet I couldn't forget the way he had looked at me last night, the way his hands had trembled when he whispered, Please, don't go. Was it all a lie, or was he just as lost in this as I was? The bathroom door creaked open, and I looked up to see Liam standing there, fully dressed, his eyes dark and searching. Emma, he said softly, stepping toward me. What's wrong? I couldn't find the words. I could barely find the air in my lungs. But when I saw the worry flicker across his face, the way his shoulders tensed like he was bracing for a blow, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. He didn't know Lydia had come. He didn't know what she had told me. And that terrified me even more. I stood on shaking legs, clutching the letter like it might fall apart if I let go. I need to leave, I whispered, my voice cracking. Liam's face fell, his jaw tightening as he took another step toward me. Please don't, he murmured, his voice breaking. Not like this, not without letting me explain. I shook my head, tears blurring my vision. I can't do this, Liam. Not if it's all been a lie. He flinched like I had slapped him. It wasn't, he said softly. It's not, but I didn't believe him. Not yet, and so I did the only thing I could. I walked away. I stayed away for 3 days. 3 days of wandering from cheap motel rooms to quiet cafes where no one knew my name. 3 days of sleepless nights with that letter pressed to my chest like a wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. I didn't answer Liam's calls. I couldn't because every time his name lit up my phone, Lydia's voice echoed louder in my mind. He married. You to ruin you. I wanted to believe it wasn't true. God, I wanted to believe. But how could I when every step I took toward him felt like walking deeper into a trap I didn't even understand? On the 4th morning, I woke to a headline plastered across every newsstand on the block. CEO Liam Mason breaks silence. I married her because I love her. I stared at the bold letters, my breath catching in my throat. I grabbed the paper. With shaking hands, reading every word like it might set me on fire. He hadn't denied the rumors. He hadn't tried to hide behind lawyers or publicists. He had faced them alone. He stood in front of a wall of flashing cameras, jaw clenched, eyes darker than I'd ever seen them. The article quoted him word for word. Yes, our marriage started as an arrangement, but I fell in love with her. And if it ruins me, so be it. I pressed my hand to my mouth, tears stinging my eyes. He'd taken every bullet, every whisper, every lie, and he hadn't once said my name with shame on his lips. I didn't know how my legs carried me back to the Mason building. I didn't remember the cab ride or the way the city blurred past my window. All I knew was that I was standing in front of the marble steps, staring up at the glass tower where Liam was probably still cleaning up the mess he had made for himself. For me, the receptionist recognized me immediately, but didn't stop me. Maybe she'd seen the headline too. I rode the elevator in silence, clutching the crumpled newspaper in my hands like a lifeline. The doors opened with a soft chime, revealing the sleek penthouse floor, and there he was, standing by the floor-to-ceiling. Windows, his back to me, his hands shoved into his pockets like he was holding himself together with sheer will. I stepped inside, the door sliding shut behind me with a quiet hiss. Liam didn't turn knot right away, but I saw the way his shoulders tensed, like he felt me there before he let himself believe it. When he finally faced me, his gray eyes were rimmed with something I couldn't quite name. Fear, maybe, or something even more fragile. He didn't speak. Neither did I just crossed the room, closing the distance between us with shaking steps until I was standing right in front of him. I held up the paper between us, my hands trembling. Why? I whispered, my voice barely more than a breath. Why would you do this? Liam swallowed hard, his jaw tightening like the words physically hurt him. Because it was the truth, he rasped. I felt my heart crack wide open, tears blurring my vision. I don't understand, I choked out. You could have denied it. You could have protected yourself. Why take the fall for me? His voice broke, raw and desperate, because I was tired of lying. I flinched, the words slicing through me. He reached for me then, hesitating like he was afraid I might shatter beneath his touch. When I didn't pull away, his hands cupped my face, his thumbs brushing the tears from my cheeks. Emma, he whispered, his voice cracking. I started this for all the wrong reasons. I let my anger, my past, twist everything. But you changed me. I shook my head, my breath hitching. Lydia lied. He cut in, his grip tightening just enough to ground me. Yes, our families have history. Yes, my father wanted revenge, but me. He leaned his forehead against mine, his voice trembling like he was holding on by a thread. I never wanted to hurt you. I pressed my palms to his chest, feeling the wild rhythm of his heartbeat beneath my touch. Then why didn't you tell me the truth? I whispered, his breath hitched, his voice barely holding steady. Because I didn't know what was true anymore until you ran. I felt the tears break free, slipping down my cheeks as I clung to him, my body shaking with the weight of everything I had tried to outrun. He held me tighter, like he was afraid I'd disappear again. I'm sorry, he breathed into my hair. I'm so damn sorry. I pulled back just enough to look up at him, my vision blurry but my heart pounding with something that felt dangerously close to hope. I don't know if I can trust you, I whispered. Not yet. Liam nodded slowly, his hands trembling against my skin. Then I'll wait, he promised, his voice cracking. I'll wait as long as it takes. And somehow I believed him. The suitcase sat on the bed like a silent witness to the war waging in my heart. I had packed it twice already, unpacked it just as many times. Clothes folded and refolded, zippers pulled shut only to be undone again. It was ridiculous. Really how I stood there staring at that small, pathetic thing like it held all the answers I couldn't find in my own chest. Liam hadn't pushed not once since the press conference, since the trembling words he had spoken with his arms wrapped around me. He had given me nothing but space, no late-night knocks on my door, No pleading calls, no desperate declarations. Just space dot, and somehow that terrified me more than anything else because I knew what it meant. He was letting me go. For the first time, Liam Mason, the man who could have bought and sold empires, was letting me choose. And I didn't know how to take that kind of freedom. I stood by the window, my hand pressed flat to the cool glasses. The city moved below me, alive and oblivious to the storm unraveling inside my soul. The letter sat on the nightstand, the one from my mother to Michael Mason. I had read it 100 times, memorized every word, every crack in the ink, and still it left me with more questions than answers. Why had she walked away from the man she once loved? Why had she married my father instead? Was that why Liam had been so angry? Was I just collateral damage in a game? They started long before I was even born. I closed my eyes, pressing my forehead to the glass, the ache in my chest spreading until it burned. And then I heard it a knock. Soft, hesitant. I turned, my breath catching in my throat. Liam stood in the doorway, no suit, no armor, just him. Barefoot in jeans and a worn gray t-shirt that made him look almost human. His hands were shoved deep into his pockets, his shoulders tense like he was bracing for whatever came next. Swallowed hard, my voice barely more than a whisper. I thought you were giving me space. He nodded slowly, taking one cautious step inside. I was, he murmured, but I couldn't. Not tonight. Not when I saw you packing. My throat tightened. I turned away, staring back out the window, afraid that if I looked at him too long, I might fall apart. Liam's voice was softer this time. Where are you going? I closed my eyes, fighting the tears I hadn't earned the right to cry. I don't know. I whispered. I can't breathe in this place anymore. I felt him move behind me, not touching, but close enough that the air shifted. And if I asked you to stay? He said quietly. I turned, finally facing him, the words breaking free before I could stop them. Why? I choked out. So you can keep. Proving to the world that I'm yours. His face crumbled like I'd ripped something straight from his chest. No, he whispered, his voice raw and shaking. So I can finally prove that I'm yours. I felt the air leave my lungs,